What's up guys, welcome back to Raising the Nuts. It's Sunday, October 7th. Today we find out the top 5 for the Vlogger in Paradise, so that's going to be pretty cool. Today's Sunday, football day. I do daily fantasy sports, so this is what my setup looks like every Sunday. It's quite an experience. I'm used to playing tons of tables from poker, so it's kind of like the same thing. I'm just like looking back at screens and seeing what's going on. I love it. It's awesome. The kids don't love it so much because I take all the TVs in the house, but it is what it is. If you guys didn't get a chance to check it out last week, the Twitch streams I did on Tuesday and Thursday at 4:30, we'll be doing again this week. Tuesday and Thursday, 4:30, twitch.tv/raisingthenuts. So today's video is the first full hand history video that I have for you guys. I'm going to take you back to about 3 weeks ago, WPT Borgata. So hopefully I did a good job in capturing some footage and talking about the hands. This is also my first time doing the graphics. I actually went out and got a new MacBook this week. I was using Jody's MacBook, older MacBook. I upgraded to Final Cut Pro, so I'm spending much time learning that too. So hopefully if this video doesn't come out great, I'm sure I'll get better as we go along. I'm going to keep working hard to make sure that you guys enjoy this experience. These videos from WPT Borgata will be multi-part series. So today, let's go back to 3 weeks ago and to day 1A. What's up guys, here at the Borgata today. We're going to be playing the $3,500 WPT main event. It's going to be 30,000 in starting chips, hour levels today. Playing 8 levels today, no dinner break. So normally on breaks I like to just kind of take a walk and do some meditation and things like that. So I probably won't report my hands during the break. I'll probably come after the day is over and kind of go through some of the hands, and hopefully some fun situations come up and we have a good and profitable day. So I don't know if you guys can tell, but it's bright outside still, and I'm updating, which is probably not a good sign. The first tournament experience while vlogging did not turn out very well. It actually started off pretty well, so I got some hands to go into here. Oh, by the way, we actually started with 40,000 in chips, not 30,000 in chips. So I opened 3-5 of spades on the button to 300. The big blind calls. The flop comes 8-7-3 rainbow, 1 spade. He checks, I bet 200, and he makes the call. The turn is a 3, so Yahtzee. This player was playing a lot of pots already very early on, so pretty excited to get this turn card. He checks, I bet 1100, so betting a little bit bigger here, just trying to build the pot. He makes the call, and the river's in 7, so you know, it's a fine card. I don't expect him to have too many 7s. He'll have some here and there, but he decides to lead 2,200, and I'm not gonna fold. I beat all the bluffs, beat the missed straight draws, beat random hands that might just be betting. So I make the call, and we win versus 9-10 offsuit. So off to a good start. The next big hand comes up at the 100-200 level. I open to 700. No ante yet. I open to 700. On the bigger side, I'm opening because the player in the small blind is the same player from last hand who's been very active, and then the big blind's a tough good player. So I would expect him to defend pretty wide, and we're deep stack, so trying to play big pots in position. So I open to 700 with 7-8 of diamonds. The small blind calls and the big blind calls. The flop comes 3-4-5 rainbow with 1 diamond. The small blind checks. The big blind leads for 1,000. I decide to call with overcards, backdoor flush draw, and gut shot to the nuts. The small blind folds. The turn is the deuce of diamonds. So I pick up the flush draw and still have the gut shot. And he leads for 3,000. When he makes this turn lead, I think he's got a very strong hand. I think he's probably got a 6x hand most of the time. When he's making this bet, he's never going to bet in this spot, I don't think, with an ace, at least for this sizing. And like not with a set or any hands like that. I don't think he has very many bluffs here. After calling from the big blind and then leading flop and leading turn, leading flop into 2 players. So we're just going to call and try to get there on the river. The river is the ace of diamonds. So we make the flush, and he bets 10,000. So we have him covered, and he has about, I believe he had about 20,000 more behind. So we are deciding whether to raise or to just call. And I think that in a tournament against a very good player, I don't think there's much value in raising. He can have some higher flushes than us when he has some 6x of diamonds hands. Pretty much all the 6x of diamonds hands are better than our hand. I guess with the exception of 5-6 of diamonds or 4-6 of diamonds type hands. But I don't know for sure that he'll call off a jam with those hands. So I think just calling against this sizing, the 10,000 chip sizing, makes the most sense against a good player. So that's what I do. And he has 6-7 offsuit for the flop nuts. We take down the birdie big pot to chip up to, I think, about 53,000 at this point. I had lost a few smaller hands in between there. And this is where things went downhill. So it folds around to me on the button, and I have 10-9 offsuit with the 10 of spades. And I raise to 700 at 100, 200 with a 200 big blind ante. The small blind has been pretty active as well. He makes the call, and the big blind folds. The flop is king of spades, jack of spades, 7, an offsuit 7. So I flopped a double gut shot and a backdoor flush draw. He checks, I bet 1,100. So I'm going to bet a little bit bigger on a board like this where it's a pretty wet board. And so I'm going to go a little bit on the bigger side. He makes the call. The turn is an offsuit 4. He checks, and on this type of board, I'm going to really go with big sizings when I do bet the turn to put the most pressure I can on some Jack X type hands and some smaller flush draws and even the King X parts of his hands. With all of my hands, I'm going to be betting on the bigger side here. I bet 4,000, and he doesn't think too long and makes it 9,000. So it's 5,000 more to call. I still have the double gut shot to the nuts. Well, to what I would assume would be the nuts. And I have, the possibility to bluff a flush card if it does come. If I make the call, we have about 20, I believe it's about 22,000 behind. I make the call, and the river is the deuce of spades. So pretty good turn, pretty good river card for us. And he checks relatively quickly. And I decide to bet 20,000, which was just about almost all of his stack. And, I can very easily have a flush here. I have a really good candidate for bluffing. As far as what I think he probably has 2 pair a large percentage of the time. Maybe sometimes a set. Maybe randomly like an ace king or king queen type hand that didn't 3-bet pre-flop. But basically, I'm repping a flush, and I can pretty credibly have a flush, and I have a good hand to bluff with. So sometimes you gotta bluff. And he thinks for about 5 minutes and makes the call, and I turn my hand over, and he has king jack and wins the pot. And sometimes you just gotta bluff, and sometimes they call. So it's no big deal. I was still left with about 15,000 in chips. So I won a few hands here and there, and then I raise king 10 of spades in the hijack to 800. The player to my left from the previous hand makes the call, and the big blind calls as well. The flop is 7-4-4 with 2 spades. The big blind checks. I bet 1,100, so kind of going on the smaller side on this type of board texture. The cutoff makes the fold, and the big blind calls. The turn card is an offsuit ace, and the big blind elects to lead for 3,000. So it's kind of an interesting spot. This player is definitely very, very splashy. I have no idea, honestly, what his turn range is here. I think he could have some flush draws. I think he could have some trips. I think he has maybe some just ace 10 type hands. I think he has a lot of ace X hands, actually. and then trips, and then 5-6 sometimes. I'm not sure what hands he's going to be bluffing here, honestly, besides just the flush draws. The flush draws are probably going to make up most of his bluffs. So I decide to call, which once I call, I have about 13,000 behind. I have position. I can kind of see what I want to do on the river, depending on various river cards, and we can take it from there. The river is the 8 of spades, so we make the second nut flush. He thinks a while, not too long, he thinks a bit, and shoves all in, having me covered. So tough spot. I think there's just too many flushes that I beat to fold, and you know, I can easily have a bunch of ace-x hands that are easy folds for me. So you know, it stinks that I have the second nut flush and not the nut flush, obviously, because I lose to the nut flush also. But I think it's just, we just have to call it off, and if he has us beat, then he has us beat, and we can beat some flushes. He could randomly have some 5-6 type hands, maybe. Randomly have, you know, some other bluffs that I'm not sure of. So I think our hand's just too good to fold. So I do make the call, and he shows us 4-8 of diamonds for the full house. And so that's a pretty unfortunate river card for us. And that ends the first tournament vlog for us. Not so good, but I can play tomorrow, and that's what I'm gonna do. We are back here at Borgata for my second chance in this tournament. Obviously yesterday didn't go too well. Well, I didn't get to talk about yesterday. Yesterday was a very hectic day. I had my third vlog come out yesterday, and it was football Sunday, so I do daily fantasy sports, so it was a little hectic to try to film anything before yesterday. I did want to talk about tournaments in general, because I am a cash game player. I play tournaments for fun, and not as often as I would like to, because having 3 kids makes it difficult to do that. You know, they have schedules that we stick to, and they have to be picked up from school and dropped off to school, and so it becomes difficult to really commit to like a 4 or 5 day event, knowing that there's going to be so many responsibilities to take care at home. So that's why I haven't really played many tournaments over the last 5 or 6 years. Probably pretty much just the World Series Poker main event, and then a few Borgata main events here and there. I do plan to play a few more tournaments, and I have been playing a little bit more tournaments when I can, but it's just got to be schedule permitting. And like I said, I view tournaments as a fun thing to do, and I don't expect anything out of them. If I do well in them, it's a bonus. You know, variance is so high in tournaments, and so just going to have a good time is what's important to me. So that's what we're gonna do. That's what we're gonna do in these tournaments. And yesterday there were some tough hands yesterday, and you know, the only thing you can do is learn from possible mistakes, or you know, throw hands by your friends and see what they think. And so that's what I did, and we'll figure out. We'll see how today goes. Today, you know, going to be focused. I just did my meditation before each tournament. I used the Prime Mind app and do the meditation there. I also usually do meditations on the break, and they just kind of keep me focused on what I should be focusing on the tournament, and not the other things kind of going around the tournament. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna get in there. We're gonna play some hands, try to build a stack, and we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I'll probably update only at the end of the day rather than on the breaks, because like I said, I do like to take that time as to kind of break my mind away from poker for a little bit, and just be relaxed and calm, and then I can go back to focusing on the actual poker. So let's get in there. 40,000 chip starting stack, and we'll fare better than yesterday. I promise you, we're gonna bag tonight. Alright guys, you might notice that it is once again daylight, but this time I'm wearing a different shirt, which means it's actually day 2 of the Borgata main event. We made it through day 1. Yesterday went way better than the previous day 1, and you'll see in the hands that we're about to go over. I will say, I didn't mention it in the hand analysis yesterday, but when I go through hands, in these tournaments. I'm not going to go really too deep into analysis, because if I did, these videos would be really long. But if you do have any questions, or you want to criticize my play, or whatever you want to do, post in the comments below and I will definitely get back to you there. And if you do want some more deep analysis, you can look forward to the Helping Hands episodes, where I go through hands with other people and really get into, you know, strategy discussion. But let's talk about how yesterday went. So very early on in the tournament, I think maybe my second or third hand after I got there, we're at the 100-100 blind level, starting stack 40,000. It folds around to the small blind, who checks the option, and I have black queens in the big blind, and I make it 400. He makes the call. The flop comes 10, 9, 7 with 2 clubs. He checks, and I decide to check back. You can go either way here in the flop, betting the flop surely for value, or checking sometimes. I decided to check here. The turn is the 3 of clubs. He checks, and I make a small bet of 300, and he thinks a bit and then check raises to 900. So I think he's kind of full of it here most of the time. I think he's going to lead most of his good hands, and so I think he could have just some like 1 club type hands. He could have just random bluff hands, maybe some 8x hands. Anyway, we have a pretty easy continue and make the call. The river is an offsuit 4, so great card for us, and he thinks a bit and bets 2100, and we make a pretty easy call, and he shows us Jack 2 of diamonds. So we beat the bluff there, and we induced the bluff by checking back the flop. So that hand started out the day pretty good, so we were off and rolling. This table ended up being one of the most passive, tight tournament tables on a day one that I've ever seen. Normally there's people, you know, big pots left and right, people are playing big pots, people are raising every spot. This table, I had so many hands where I just raised and took it down, or raised and c-bet and won, and really was able to chip up a lot. Mostly running good, by having good situations. Also just a lot of people folding in general. So nothing too interesting happened until the 200-400 level. I have about 60,000 and open under the gun to 1100 with 9-10 of hearts. The hijack calls and both the blinds fold. The hijack had been playing a decent amount of hands. We get a great flop of Jack 9-9 with 2 clubs and 1 spade. I make a small c-bet, as I would a lot on this board texture, of 800, and he makes the call. The turn is the 7 of spades, and now I'm ready to put some more pressure on with a lot of my range and make a bigger bet size. So I bet 3,200, and he pretty quickly makes it 9,000. I think I think it's another spot where somebody's kind of full of it. You know, I have blockers to the 8-10, which is definitely in his range, but I have the blocker to the 8-10. I obviously have trips, so I have a blocker to trips. And there's just not really too many hands that I'm worried about here. You know, if we're beat, it's going to be a 9x hand. I think he can have some like King 10 type hands that turn double gut shot, some backdoor flush draw hands that decide to raise. He could have some Jack X hands that are trying to get to a cheaper showdown, I guess. We have him covered by slight amount, but I don't think there's any point in me raising here, because I think he's continuing with better hands, and you know, we can induce some bluffs on the river. So I make the call. The river is an offsuit ace, and I check, and he thinks a bit and then checks back. We show our hand and we're good. At 300-600, I open under the gun 1 with King of Hearts Queen to 1500. The player next to act makes the call, and then the player on the button also calls, and the blinds fold. The flop comes Jack of Hearts, 10 of Hearts, an offsuit 7. So pretty wet board texture. We do have a really good hand to continue with the backdoor flush draw, the open-ended. But being out of position against both players, I actually like checking here a lot, because we can check, call a bet, and reevaluate on some turns, deciding what to do. And if it checks around, then we have the option to lead the turn, facing what we would guess would be weaker ranges, considering they are probably going to bet their strong hands on this board. So we do check, and it quickly checks around. The turn is the offsuit ace, so we make the nut. Solid turn selection there. So I go ahead and bet 3,200. The player to my left quickly folds, and the player on the button pretty quickly calls. The river is the 9 of hearts, completing the front door flush, bringing 4 to a straight. And at this point, I think my best option is to make a kind of small blocker-ish bet with the hopes of getting calls from 2-pair hands. And this player is a good player, very good player, it seemed like. Very active and aggressive player. So I thought that maybe a small bet might also induce a bluff, and we have a great hand to bet call with on the river, having a straight and also having blockers 2 flushes, and considering the fact that he didn't bet the flop, probably pretty unlikely that he has a flush here. So I go ahead and bet 4,300, and he doesn't think too long and makes it 20,000. We call pretty quickly, and we beat Queen Jack. I actually couldn't see his suits because I was at the other end of the table, but I believe he had Queen Jack with the Queen of Hearts. So it turned his pair into a bluff. I think actually might be the next orbit. I opened same spot, under the gun 1 to 1500 with ace 6 of diamonds. The same player from the previous hand 3-bets the button to 5200. It folds back to us. We have him covered easily, and I believe we had about 60 or 70k to start the hand. I could see a 4-bet here. That would make sense. I don't mind a call either. It's not the best hand to call with, like ace 6. I would much rather have a wheel type hand, or obviously a stronger ace hand. But we're obviously getting a decent price, and we cover him, so we can apply some pressure here and there. So I decided to make the call. The flop comes down 10-9-4 with 2 diamonds. I check, he bets 6,500, and so now I can decide whether to raise or call. With a bigger diamond draw, like an ace jack of diamonds or ace queen of diamonds, where I'm blocking overpair, another overpair, plus having more equity against a hand like jacks, I would be tempted to check raise this. But again, with my hand, I think it plays better just as a call. So I make the call. The turn is an offsuit 10, which is an interesting card. We should probably have some more 10x hands in our range, given that I think he's more likely to flat with his 10x type hands. So I do like leading, and in a cash game, I would very often lead. I chose to check in this spot, thinking that it was going to check through a fair amount. Also thinking that my hand in decent shape against his Broadway type hands, if those chose to 3-bet, like king, queen, king, jack, queen, jack. So the river is the queen of diamonds. So we make our nut flush, and we have to decide what to bet. When I think about this spot, I'm not going to have very many bluffs now. That card hits a lot of my hands. Now I have a pair with king, queen, and queen, jack. I have flushes. I have king, jack. I have a straight. My only bluffs are really going to be the 7-8 suited hands. Jack 8 gets there too if I had peeled that to a 3-bet. So I really have very few bluffs in this spot. But I don't really want to go for a check raise, because I also don't have many check raise bluffs either, and I don't think that he will bet this card very often. So I decided to make a smaller bet relative to the size of the pot of 10,600, hoping to get called by overpairs, maybe a curious queen jack or king queen type hand, and he doesn't think too long and makes the call, and he had aces. So we cracked aces there on the river, so some more run good. As you can tell, the day went pretty swimmingly so far, not losing any big pots and just kind of cruising along. At the 400, 800 blind level, last blind level of the day, I open to 2,000 with ace queen of diamonds, under the gun 2. The button calls and small blind calls. The flop comes down king 10 8 with the king and 8 of diamonds. So we flop the gut shot, overcard, and nut flush draw. So great flop for us. The small blind checks. Now I can decide to either bet, which is obviously fine with all the equity we have, or I can check. And the button, he had about 30,000 to start, was playing a lot of hands, and I thought he would be pretty likely to take a stab here, and we can check raise and kind of get all in with really good equity, sometimes against hands that are in really bad shape, like worse flush draws, and we can get value from hands like queen jack and hands like that too. Or we can force a fold out of like a 10x type hand, maybe if it stabs the flop. And basically we just have the stack size. At this point I had over 100k, so we had the stack size to put some leverage on his stack. I do go ahead and check. So he does go ahead and bet 3,500. The small blind folds, and I decide to check raise to 12,500, thinking that most of the time he's probably either going to jam or fold. But he decides on a call, which is fine. We do still have about 18,000, 17 or 18,000 to shove on the turn. The turn is the 10 of diamonds, so pairs the middle card and we make the nut flush. I think you can go ahead and just jam here. You can check. I think both options are fine. It's pretty great when you hit your hand and you have both those options. I opt to check, thinking that he may fold some king X hands now that the flush got there, and he might also bluff all in with some straight draws. So I decide to check, and he checks. The river is an offsuit 6. I decided at this point that we just need to go for value and jam it in and get value from the king X hands that decided to check back the turn. So I go ahead and shove. He calls pretty quickly, and we're good. So we end up bagging 139,700 chips from that 40,000 starting. Great day one, smooth day one. Appreciate you guys checking out the channel. Part 2 of this series will be up sometime next week. I wasn't able to film any hole cards for this tournament due to the policy of the Borgata. Let me know what you think of the hand graphics. It's a work in progress. Let me know what you'd like to see in them that will help you follow the action better. And I'll do my best to keep working on those. Thanks again so much, and I'll see you guys tomorrow on Twitch for the Twitch stream of the Play Every Hand Challenge. And best of luck to everyone in the Vlogger in Paradise competition.